I'm Coach Kelly Honholtz with Revolt Power, and today we're going to be talking about wiring battery modules. I'm going to show you how to do it so that not only is it professional, but that you can stay safe while you're doing it. If you like the video, please think about the whole like, comment, subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us keep quality videos coming to you. I'm going to try and keep this shorter than the previous ones. Going to have to make some cuts in this, so there may be some jumps here and there, but we're going to try and make it as seamless as possible. So stay tuned. I'm going to get some safety gear on, and then we'll get started from there. So what do you need? First of all, we always start with safety. We've got our non-conductive nitrile impregnated cotton gloves. We've got wraparound eye pro. You know me. Got a couple of shop towels. For our supplies, the supply list is a little more exhaustive today. We do have dielectric grease and a couple of cotton swabs with a paper towel. We have electrical tape. We have our flange stainless steel nuts. We have our battery terminal caps, the little rubber caps that we use. We have crimp terminals, and these are going to crimp to the end of each wire. We're going to be pulling these little yellow collars off. I'll just do that real quick to show you how it does, because we are going to be using just the terminal itself. We're going to throw the collar away. So we'll be using a bunch of those. Zip ties. Wire. Lots and lots of wire. I always keep extra rolls on hand. Better to have too much than not enough. For tools are pretty straightforward. Wire strippers. Terminal crimpers. Wire cutters. I like really high quality wire cutters. Scissors, because that's going to work with your shrink tube. A lighter for the shrink tube. And a speed wrench and 8mm deep well socket. And then the last thing on our list, I'm going to move this up so that you can see it. I keep big 100-foot rolls of shrink tubing because I use so much of it. So if you're going to be doing a lot of batteries, you might want to think about buying it in bulk. It's better than the little variety assortment with just a couple of little short pieces of each type. If you get it to a size where you're using the same thing consistently, consider buying it in bulk. It's actually a lot cheaper than you might think. 100-foot roll like this was like $18 or so. So, first thing I'm going to do is take my canned air, because you always know I got canned air, and I'm going to go ahead and blow the battery off. I want to make sure that there's no dirt, dust, dog hair in my case, or any sort of debris or contaminants before we start working on it. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to get my safety gear on, and then we'll get started from there. Okay, so we are back and kind of zoomed in on the battery. Now you can't see it, but I have a mark with a silver Sharpie on my bench top, and I have another mark here on the bench top for 1 foot and then 2 feet. And what this is for is that as I'm measuring wire, I want about, if it's close to the distribution block, like this one, obviously the distribution block is mounted on it. If you're curious how we did that, look at video 003, or excuse me, 002, and you can see how we added this plate with studs to be able to put a mounting block on it. So what I want to do first is figure out where I want to start. I'm going to start at the end because that's my furthest point and work my way towards this. I'm only going to be doing one bank, which is 7 cells this time. So my first one is a negative. So I take my wire very carefully. I'm just going to hold the wire to the end, and I'm going to stretch it out a foot past the end of the terminal block where my mark is on the bench top. Once I've done that, I just hold it in place, take my wire cutters, and I cut my first section. I'm just going to repeat this process For the positive side, I use red and black because they're industry standard for automotive. So I line it up with my positive post, and I'm going to go out to my mark on the bench top at 1 foot, hold it here, and then I'm just going to cut it. Helps if I grab the cutter and not the crimpers. Boom. Just like that. Now for the moment, I would go ahead and just set it aside. When I do these, because I'm working in bulk, I normally, if I do this one, I've got 4 modules to work with. So I cut 4 at this length. Or excuse me, I cut 2 at this length because 2 of them, there's going to be one right above it. So they're very, very close to it. The ones that are at the bottom and at the very top, I cut 2 of each one. So 2 of these, 2 of these, etc., etc., etc. And what I'm basically doing is it makes it easier just to go ahead and cut all my wire at once rather than having to measure and measure and measure and measure over and over. So it's just a time-saving measure. All right. So anyway, find the end of our electrical tape here. Apparently I did too good of a job with this. If you find the end and you can't get it to start, just grab a little knife. Just scrape it a little bit. Pull up the corner. But you got a little bit to grab onto. Go ahead and pull a piece off. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover one end of the wire. Just like that. I'm going to do the exact same thing on our red wire. Why? Because when we put the terminals on the other end and we wire these in, we don't want a bare wire end flopping around and potentially shorting against something. So it's easier right now just to go ahead and put a little bit of tape on them. That way you're safe. So having done that, next we take our piece of wire. We're going to go ahead and strip it back about 4 millimeters, 3/8, something like that. We're going to grab our scissors. I'm going to real quick cut a couple little pieces of shrink tubing. About a 1/2 inch, about 6 millimeters each. What I'm going to do is go ahead and see if I can get this centered on the camera. Slide my shrink tubing on. Take the terminal that I've already, let's see if we can get a little bit of focus there, that I've already pulled the collar off of. I'm going to put it on the end. I'm going to use my Klein crimpers. You can get the little ratcheting ones. I don't like them. These Kleins produce a terminal crimp that's simply indestructible. Once I've done that, you'll notice there's a little flat spot right in front of the crimp tooth. You turn the terminal 90 degrees once you've crimped it, and then you use that little flat spot to bring those 2 crimp sides together. And that is how a good crimp, let's see if we can get some focus there. There we go. Should look. I'm going to go ahead and slide my shrink tubing up. My lighter's almost dead, I think, but we'll hopefully it'll work for us a couple times. Go ahead and very gently just shrink tube that down. So that's a nice, flexible, professional looking terminal connector when we're done. So at this point, we're going to take our negative wire. We're going to do the exact same thing. You can see as I'm doing this, little pieces of debris and wire tips. Every so often you probably want to stop. I'm going to pull this collar off, throw that collar away, just like that. Now we're going to go ahead and slide our shrink tube on. Smarter to do it now because when you get everything together, it's kind of hard to get your shrink tubing on after the fact. So again, I've got it on there. Grab my Klein crimpers. I know I don't get paid endorsement from Klein. I just like their stuff. Crimp that down really nice. Maybe a couple of good hits there. I'm going to turn it 90 degrees, put it in that flat anvil area, bring that together. That's never coming off. Once I do that, I go ahead, I'm going to slide my shrink tubing into place. Go ahead and heat my shrink tubing up, get that set. Cool. Now, so now we've got two really safe, professional looking wires to work with. They're taped on the ends so that they can't become a potential short. I always like to work from the ground side first. So I'm going to come in here, slide this all the way down. I'm going to, at this point, bend a 90. If I had that collar on it, I wouldn't be able to put that 90 degree in it without it messing up the wire. So bring it all the way down. I'm going to slide it onto my negative post at that end. And take a moment and do two things. I'm going to get out my flange nuts, my dielectric grease, and my cotton swab. A little bit of dielectric grease on that cotton swab. And I'm just going to kind of go around the post. Usually I just dab it on one side. Well, since I've got it out, I might as well do both posts at the same time, right? As you screw the nut on, it's going to spread that dielectric grease and clamp it down. So we've got that. Put our cap back on our dielectric grease. We're going to grab two flange nuts. And somebody suggested that I zoom in and let you guys see what these look like. So they basically have, let's see if we can get some focus there. You can see that they've got kind of a built-in flat surface like a giant washer right at the base. And those clamp down really well on those terminals. So we're going to come right here, move this up just a hair, really kind of see that. There we go, zoom in. Whoop, see my electrical boxes there that I'm saving. And you can see that wire. I'm going to go ahead and just start that by hand. Once I've got that started by hand, I can go ahead and do the exact same thing. Grabbing my red hot wire, positive if you prefer. Bring it down. I'm going to bend a little 90 degree in the end of it and slip it onto that post. I'm going to grab my other nut. Yep, I guess it's here on the countertop. And I'm going to start that. Once I got both of my wires started by hand, I'm going to take my speed wrench and I'm just going to tighten these down. You guys that have been watching my videos know that I'm all about the tighten it down in the dirt because there's not a published torque spec on this. Nice and slow. There we go. Kind of do the same thing down here. Get it close. And you can align your wire. Okay, there we go. So at this point, all we're going to do, again, I'm all about protecting these battery caps, or excuse me, these battery posts. I'm going to go ahead at this point, I'm going to slide the battery cap onto the post. Now, as we work, again, we want to separate the professionals from the amateurs. I'm going to take a couple of zip ties. I'm going to set one right here. I'm simply going to thread it. There's a little plate on top of each battery separator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that plate as an anchor point to tie my wire into place. Nice and tight, but you don't have to crack it. Take your wire cutters, clip the end off of the zip tie. One there. Again, we want to make sure that we're doing each one the exact same way. So I'm going to come back right here so we can tie this hot and neutral together. Okay, good. On this end, it's the exact same process. Now these are not the normal, let me change this view a little bit. These are not the normal distribution bars that I use. Unfortunately, my supplier does not carry the ones that I normally had. They were both narrower and shorter. So I had additional holes at either end where I could run the wire up from the bottom, and it was very nice and neat. In this case, they do come with covers, and the covers kind of fit on like this. So the red ones and the black ones, and they have little nuts that hold them in place. So all I'm going to do in this case, the ones that are below or above it, all I've got to do with these is simply crimp a terminal onto them, and I think I'm going to actually do one just to show you how it works. I want to make this nice and neat, so I'm going to bend a little 90-degree here, take out all my slack, bend another little 90-degree about there. Okay, hold my position. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to change the camera just a hair. Okay. So here's my first screw. I'm going to go ahead at this point, cut this off. Take my strippers. Pull that off. Now I'm going to cut a little bit more tubing, shrink tubing, excuse me. Cut 2 pieces of that. Slide that shrink tubing on. Okay. Now that wire is bare, so we have to keep, it's just the ground, so it's really not dangerous. But we do want to keep an eye on it. Pull my collar off. My shrink tube is already on there. Get that terminal crimp on there. You can also do it this way, where you take your crimper, you put the terminal into the crimp, just like that. It holds it in place, and you just slide it in, crimp it down, turn it 90 for the anvil. A lot of people don't know what that anvil is for. Well, now you know. So hopefully today you learned something. Okay, got my 2 nice little 90s there. Take my lighter. Like I said, this thing is almost dead. I'm going to have to grab one. Okay, set that there. I'm going to grab a screwdriver real quick. It's a great thing about having really nice toolboxes and rollaways. Take my first screw out. I'm going to go ahead, put my screw into the terminal. So now the terminal is holding it. Grab my screwdriver. These have little washers on them. So it's real easy. And just screw this in nice and tight. It's got a little spring washer on it, so it's not the end of the world. Set my screwdriver down. Go ahead and line my wire up nice and neat. Now, normally I would basically say, don't do this. So do as I say, not as I do. But in this case, because of the inability to come up from the bottom, I either have two choices. I can go around the bottom and come up from the outside, but that leaves the wire exposed, or I can go over the top of the negative wires and wire this into place. It's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to bend me a 90 and bend me another 90 so it looks nice and neat. I'm going to clip that off right there. So now I have a bare hot wire. So I want to be really careful with this. Take my cover off so that I'm ready to go. There's that. Now I'm just going to put that there. It's up in the air. Can't hurt anything. Grab my little piece of shrink tube, which apparently I didn't get a secondary one. So I'm going to grab a piece of shrink tube. Now you see why I have it on big rolls right behind me. Oh, I did have a piece of shrink tube. So I'm going to slide that on. Again, it's just up in the air like a cobra pointing at the ceiling. Can't hurt anything there. Pull my collar off. Get my crimper ready by getting a terminal into the crimper. Go ahead and crimp that down. Turn it 90 degrees. Squeeze it together on the anvil. I'm going to slide my shrink tube up. Grab my lighter. Shrink that down. Now, I'm going to leave that up in the air. Can't hurt anything so long as it's vertical. I'm going to pull one screw out. Got to be careful. These little screws have little tiny washers on them, and those washers will magically fly away in a lot of cases. You got to be careful of that. Get this vertical. Drop my screw into it. Get my screw onto my screwdriver. As we get further along, we may have to loosen this to adjust it as we work. But basically at this point, once I get all 6 of these in, 3 hots, 3 neutrals, I would then zip tie everything all the way down the body to keep them from moving around. So right now, that's basically the process, and you're going to be doing 6 leads for 4 and then 4 modules. So there's basically 24 leads that have to be made on every one of these 4 module packs. So it's not hard, but it's just time consuming. Anyway, so I'm going to pause this, talk a little bit about what we've done, and then go from there. So we're back, and basically that's the first step. Just got to do it 12 times. A lot of zip ties, a lot of terminals, a lot of shrink tubing, a lot of wire, but it's a very simple process, and most things in life are a complex series of simple tasks. If you do it this way, keep yourself safe, your battery will perform well, you won't get hurt, and everybody's happy. So again, thanks. There's really not a whole lot to this. If you don't mind, please like, subscribe. If you would, leave a comment. That helps us get some more exposure to other people that might be interested in this technology. And we appreciate it. Have a great week, guys.